Hi, I'm Joy Han Silva,
And I'm Laura Han Segundo Collins.
and welcome to Hahnacity. Hi, Laura.
Hey, Julia.
I'm really excited because we're actually interviewing one of our really good friends, Shelby,
Hmm.
who was a coach at
Yeah.
Foothill Academy. Like, I totally forgot this. You also coached there for a brief period.
Yeah. Let's see. It was technically my first job. I think I was 15 and Shelby was there during that time.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
I wasn't at Foothill at this time. This is when I was away and training with Rick. And then when I would come home to visit, I would go to Joanne's gym to condition or do some, basics or whatever. And Shelby was one of the coaches. And we developed a friendship, all three of us. And it was lovely. And we get to interview her today.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we pause real quick? Am I shiny or is it okay?
I think you have a beautiful glow.
That's not the same as shiny.
No, it looks good. You look good. You look dewy. You know
Okay.
that dewy is in, right? Like that's what the
I
kids.
know, but I'm sweaty. I'm also sweaty.
You don't look sweaty. You look like
Okay.
you look really good.
Okay.
I think we should
I'm
keep
really
that
nervous
part in
about
at
how,
all
because I can get, it's
costs.
hot here.
How hot? Like 90s?
Um, it's actually not that bad. No, it's not. I'm just
Menopause?
perimenopause.
Yeah.
Ooh, I think.
I
Yeah.
was like sweating so much last night and Marvin's like, you just hot? And I'm like, yep, that's what it is. Just hot.
It's
That's all.
so awesome to be in your mid 40s.
Right? So good. Okay. So we get to interview Shelby and
Yeah,
I'll read her bio for us. Yeah?
sounds great.
All
Hmm.
right. Shelby Canino is a wife, sister, mother of two teen boys, friend, and public health nurse slash infection control nurse for the county of San Diego. Shelby was a former competitive high school gymnast and coached at Foothill Academy of Gymnastics, where she met Joy and Laura, and the rest is history. So let's welcome Shelby. Yay!
Woo woo!
Woo, woo, woo! We're so excited, Shelby,
Shell the
because
beans.
it's been so long since I've seen you. Or I don't even
hmm
know when's the last time you saw Shelby. It's been like a hot
It's
minute.
been
In
a
person
long time. Probably,
Way before
when we met at
COVID.
the beach, right? When we met at the
we
beach
went,
and
we met in Laguna when we both were
uh,
hanging out with Bill and, oh God, Marissa yeah, I forget his wife's name, but
But with Bill.
we met in Laguna, but with Bill.
oh,
Do you remember?
yes, I
The
remember
kids
now.
were really, really little. Like I want to say
Yeah,
my kids were not even in double digits yet.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
And
And they're
They were
that
like
was
little,
teenagers now.
that was
they
the
were like
first time our older son now touched the Pacific Ocean.
beach. Yep.
Yeah.
Whoa. And I
And we were
think,
at like tide pools or something like that. That's kind of crazy now because now I'm thinking
wow.
Steven's graduating, Ryan will graduate next year.
Oh my God.
I'm like,
Wild.
I
Time
know all these gray hairs.
flies.
That's all of that.
So crazy.
Gosh
I mean,
darn
we've known each
kids.
other for a really long time, Shelby, because
Yeah.
I was still a gymnast. I was still like a little gymnast
Mhm.
when we met. In your intro, we were talking about how I was still training with Rick. And
That's right.
one of my memories of coming home, I remember you and Laura took me to a diner. I don't know if you remember this. And we went to go have like lunch, and you basically told the waiter that I was going to be an Olympian, and he made me sign the check with my autograph. Do you
I remember
remember
that.
Oh,
this?
that's so
And
cute.
I was like, what?
I remember that. I'm like, she's gonna be famous. So you need to like get her autograph now. We're gonna see her on the Olympics and she's gonna be famous. And he was like, oh, and then he better get her
Yeah,
autograph then.
it was really
Oh my
cute.
I'm good
God.
at promoting you guys.
Yeah, it was really cute. But I do
Yeah.
But
remember
yeah,
that as a kid.
so Joanne Bachkian, the person who brings everybody together, right? She
Mm.
was very kind and hired me without any club experience. I was still in high school. I was still competing at high school level. I think I wasn't even out of compulsories yet because I started gymnastics really late. I started in like 8th grade and it was a PE option, and that's how I got involved in it. Through that, I ended up doing high school gymnastics. And then through high school gymnastics, it segued me into coaching because one of my teammates was coaching at like ELAC rec on Saturdays. We'd go to ELAC college and set up a gym and set up a mats and stuff like that and teach like kids who were taking like rec classes on Saturdays. I don't know how I found about Joanne, but I went and talked with her, told her that I was interested in coaching like their little toddlers group. So I was always with like the little kids. Do you remember that? I always loved working with the little toddlers. And I was working with the rec kids mostly. And I never really coached team because that wasn't something that I had experience in, and I didn't feel comfortable doing that. But I really loved coaching the rec kids because for me, gymnastics was a way to keep me out of trouble because I grew up in a tough part I grew up in a not a great part of town. And if I had too much time on my hands, I would go and do things that I wasn't supposed to do. So gymnastics for me was a segue of keeping me off the street so that I wouldn't end up somewhere like jail or on drugs or pregnant is basically what gymnastics did for me. It's also been kind of the constant and up until I graduated college, because I continued to coach after I left Joanne's to go to college. And I coached up in Santa Cruz for a little bit. And I did the same thing. I just did rec classes, just to kind of make some money in college. And it allowed me to kind of still stay healthy, not just kind of sit around and get heavy and unhealthy. It allowed me to stay active. And so I feel like for me, like Joanne was like the beginning of a lot of different journeys for me, but she introduced me to a lot of really great people. She gave me an opportunity that kept me out of trouble. And it was kind of goes along with like who she is as a person. She is kind of like the glue that holds everybody together. And she connects everybody with everybody else. And she also kind of acts like a mother figure a little bit and will take you under her wing and kind of guide you through tough patches in your life and try to make sure you stay safe. And I'm forever indebted to her for that.
Yeah. She's definitely a full person perspective human being. Let alone
and
coach.
Sometimes she got the bad end of the stick and it wasn't deserved. And I feel like sometimes people didn't appreciate all the things that she did. And I haven't been able to like reach back out to her and talk to her about that stuff. But now as a mom who's got kids, and being able to like look back and be like hindsight's 50-50, like I really feel like Joanne came into my life at a time when I really needed somebody who could be that person for me, because my parents were so busy just trying to make ends meet that, a lot of us in the 80s and 90s were latchkey kids. And so we didn't have parents who supervised us. And so I kind of feel like she was like a second mom. After school, I would drive over to the gym and I would hang out there and I would do my homework there. And I distinctly remember hitting Albertsons and getting my dinner, which consisted of like a tub of butter and like a loaf of French bread from Albertsons, hot and fresh at 4:00. And I would sit there and eat my hot and fresh French bread with my butter and do my homework while I was waiting for all of you guys to come. And then I'd teach classes until 9:00 and then help her clean up. And then I'd go home and do homework. And it was kind of one of those constants where I wasn't alone. I had someone who was kind of watching over me without really watching over me. She probably didn't realize she was kind of that person for me, but she was the person who kind of made sure I feel like if I didn't have her, I would have probably been doing a lot of other things like hang out in Hollywood and doing really bad stuff. Cause grow up in LA, you can get easily sucked into a lot of stuff. So that's a lot of what gymnastics did for me, is kept me off the street, made sure I didn't get in trouble.
Shelby, can we even go back a little bit more? Because you said you started at 8th grade. How did you even find your way to gymnastics to begin with?
So I went to a junior high school in East Los Angeles called El Sereno Middle School. Well, it's called middle school now. Back then it was junior high. And there was a teacher by the name of Mrs. Lee who was teaching it as a PE class. And me and my best friend from like kindergarten, my friend Lydia, we were like, we don't want to take a lame-o like PE class where we have to like do all the different sports and everybody talks about how much they hate PE period. But then there was this class and we were like, let's just take gymnastics. And so, Lydia and I talked to Mrs. Lee and asked her like, hey, can we just take this class instead of taking like regular PE? And she was like, yeah, sure. And so we got into it that way. And the equipment that we used was like the bottom of the bottom. Like the beams were wood. The floor mats, if we were lucky, didn't have tears in them. Like the mat, the folding out mats were just like so compressed that you might as well have just not had mats on the floor.
Yeah.
You were literally tumbling on like a wood floor, like a wood basketball floor with no spring.
Yeah.
The bars were like all rusted and you know, like trying to tighten them up. It took like 3 of us to like tighten up the bars. 2 would be on each side and one in the middle holding the little knob to tighten it up so that we could get it up there. And they didn't expand out all the way because it was kind of it was a super old set that like couldn't expand out very far. So like whenever we would do you know, like tap swings or whatever, we'd always smack the back of our calves with it because we couldn't get them out far enough so that us short people didn't, you know, the short people were hitting our calves on the lower bar when we do tap swing. That's how close they were together. But it was better than having to run laps or play basketball or kickball or whatever. And we weren't outside. We were inside a gym with a bunch of other kids who grew up in a pretty bad neighborhood and we're just trying to look for something different and a way out to escape for like a little bit, because we knew once we went home, it was gangs, drugs, worried about getting your butt kicked on the way home, coming home to an empty household sometimes. You know, a lot of us, our parents were like first generation American, or they, you know, just came over from another country. I lived in a very Latin community in El Sereno. A lot of my kids' friends were like parents who were first generation blue collar worker neighborhood. Both parents were always working. So we were literally like all by ourselves once we got home. And Mrs. Lee was one of those people that if we wanted, you know, she understood that. A lot of the teachers that worked in those schools, they understood that like kids who grew up in neighborhoods like ours, it was rough. And so they just tried to provide any opportunities that they could to show so there was more than just getting involved in gangs or doing, you know, doing drugs and getting pregnant, because that was pretty much what was happening in our community at the time. Yeah. So that's kind of how it fell in my lap, and then I loved it. And I was like, I was always a kid who was like trying to do somersaults and cartwheels on the grass out front, and we would use the lines on the crack of the, you know, the cracks in the sidewalk as our balance beam and that sort of thing. In my neighborhood, it started with me, and then all the kids underneath me that would play, we would all do the things like try to do cartwheels on the curb. We would do as many somersaults in a row until we got dizzy.
Oh, that was a fun one.
And
I did that too.
Yeah.
I'm like laughing because I'm like, oh my God, I did that too.
Such a fun game.
The thing that drove my mom crazy, my dad not so much, but my mom, the thing that drove my mom crazy was I was always like jumping off of the side, the like armrest of the couch and like trying to do a flip and land on my back or land on my stomach. And she's like, you're gonna hurt yourself. But it never really resonated like maybe they should put me in gymnastics, right? And so I would do that as a little kid, and it never resonated like we should do something with this energy. Like you guys had parents who were like, we're gonna stick you in gymnastics, whereas like my parents didn't. That wasn't even a thought that crossed their mind. Like they were happy if I was just gonna graduate high school. Like there was no real hard push to do anything more than that. So junior high kind of did it for me, where I was able to find this class. And then from there, it just kind of kept going. And luckily we had a program still running in our high school. And then from there, you know, connecting with people through other friends who were doing it in high school, like other coaches that worked in the high school circuit, they would go, hey, are you looking for a job? Or I think that's how I found out about Joanne, is I found out about Joanne through someone who was working there was working there. And it might've been in her, remember when she used to do the mobile program and she would go to
I remember that. Yeah.
You remember that?
Remember that. Yeah.
And I think it was somebody who was working in her mobile program with her and going to like the elementary schools after school and setting up the mats out in the playground and the portable bar. And I think that's how I found her. And then from there, because I had a driver's license I could drive all the way from El Sereno to Monrovia to go work there.
Wow. That's crazy.
I
It's
know.
amazing. It's
It was a
amazing.
good, my dad was like, why do you want to work way out there? It was like, because I like it. Like I missed a lot of vacations because I missed a lot of family, like traveling vacations. My dad will say things like, oh, do you remember when we went to Zion? And then I'll look at him with a blank face and I'll go, no. And he's like, oh, you weren't there because you were home. And I was like, I was working. I was, gymnastics coaches don't get the weekend off. We have to do birthday parties.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
but he
Yeah.
was kind of like, he didn't understand the reason why I chose to work on my weekends and hang out at the gym. And for
Yeah.
me, it was an escape from what my reality was, which was a really bad neighborhood.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shelby, how long were you doing gymnastics versus coaching? Or did it overlap as well?
So when I started in 8th grade, I was probably like 12 or 13. Is that 8th grade?
Yeah.
How old are you in 8th grade?
Yeah.
Probably like 13.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started coaching, I think at like 16. And I was competing high school gymnastics, and then I'd work at ELAC on the weekends because it was just like a Saturday, Sunday gig where people would come, they would sign up like through the college to do like weekend classes. And me and my friend Tina would coach these classes and we'd have it in the gym. It was kind of the same setup. Like we'd fold out the mats and have our little pullover bar and maybe like a wedge or an octagon to like teach people how to do back walkovers and backflips and stuff. But it was like a really super crude program, minimum wage, which back then was probably like maybe $6 or $7 an hour.
Wow.
And I was only working like maybe
I want to say when I
5
started, it was
hours.
$4.25. It was $4.25.
I think I was like $5.75 when I started.
When I first started.
Yeah, it might have been, well, my very, very first job was Miller's Outpost, and I folded jeans on the jean wall at the Pasadena Mall.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And then across
Amazing.
the street was the Hello Kitty store.
Oh my gosh. You're really dating us right now.
Wow. Yes.
Do you remember this?
Store.
Okay. So,
Yes.
so I worked at Miller's Outpost and I folded jeans. I think I was getting about $5 an hour to do that. I did that job, and then I added the ELAC job, and then I quit both of them when I started working for Joanne. Yeah, I mean, I was pretty much just like, I went to school and I worked because I had to somehow put gas in my car, and I had to help pay for repairs when I needed it because I had a car that was pretty beat. But I in terms of like real jobs, like I feel like the gymnastics job was like a true real job because I did that from when I was about 16-ish till I left to college. I was a transfer student from Pasadena City College. I transferred at 25. So I did it for like 10 years. And I would say I competed until I was 18. And then I stopped. Because high school, you compete till you're done, like your senior year, and that's it. So and I never got like past level 7, I think.
Got it.
Back when
Do you have a preference to being a gymnast or a coach? Did you prefer one over the other since it coincide? I prefer coaching. Okay. I think for me, being able to conceptually understand how to do something and then explain it was easier for me to do than to actually have someone tell me I had to do something and then I try and do it. So I remember, here's a perfect example. So I remember and I don't remember the name of this coach, but he used to be the coach at, what's the name of it? The coach from Flares is the one who I heard lots of stories about from all of you guys. Yeah. And it was enough to scare me from him that I tried to keep as much distance from him as someone who had to work with him. Mm-hmm. And there was one night where I don't know where Joanne was, but we had the gym. All of us had the gym. There was a bunch of us there just kind of hanging out. We were on the tumble track and he was like taunting me to do a full. And I was like, I've never done a full before. Like the hardest skill I've ever learned was like a back layout. Like that was the hardest thing I've ever done. And he was like, oh, it's easy. You can do it. And like, he basically talked me into throwing a full for the first time on the tumble track into the crash pad. And it freaked me out. Oh, and wow. I never attempted ever again because I felt so out of control and not aware of what was going on with me. I had no control over it. But
having that experience and then flash forwarding a couple of, like a year, and teaching a higher level rec group that had cheerleaders in it that had to learn it, I was able to take that knowledge, just having a sense of trying to learn how to do it, but I was able to teach it to a kid who didn't have that skill, and I was able to conceptualize it and then fit it out and train this person to eventually get their full. So I think for me, coaching was a better fit than actually being a gymnast, just because of the way I process how to do all that stuff. So, and I liked it. I liked hanging out with the kids and playing jokes on them and throwing them around.
You're fun.
And playing games.
Super fun.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I was a kid when I met you, and I thought you were super fun.
I was the one who wasn't serious. And I think that was probably a lot of it. Was I didn't take it as seriously as I think a lot of other people who coached there did. And because for me, I never got to that level of gymnastics to where I had to go through the seriousness and all of the struggles and everything. It was, for me, it was always something fun to do. It was my happy place. It was where I could go, and it was my escape. And so I had a very different, a different thought process on what gymnastics meant for me. Whereas a lot of people who were at the levels you guys were, it was like there was a lot of pressure. You guys were under a lot of stress. You guys were under a lot of, emotional and verbal abuse. And why is the thumb thing up now?
I don't know, but it's awesome.
Do you guys see that?
We're keeping that part in. I'm sorry. We have to keep that in.
I totally didn't even, maybe because I'm doing the thumb, am I doing this?
I don't get it either.
Do it again.
I have an iPad. I'm not really very good with the iPad stuff, but it just cracks me up when it does these random things. I'm like, what are you doing? Anyway, so yeah, gymnastics for me was not super serious. It was always fun. It was always an outlet to kind of release a lot of the stress of growing up as a kid in urban Los Angeles. I probably have a very different experience than a lot of gymnasts who competed, and it has kind of shaped my identity in terms of who I am today as a person. It taught me how to stay motivated. It taught me how to be responsible. It taught me how to be a leader. It taught me that I could do hard things. A lot of those life lessons that I learned in those 10 years of being a coach and being a gymnast, I still use those lessons today. So, I mean, nursing school was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I did it, and it wasn't easy. And there were days where I wanted to quit, and I wanted to just say, screw that. I don't want to do this anymore. This is dumb. And weirdly, the teachers that I had were very cutthroat and very intimidating. And I mean, I had a cohort of 33, and out of the 33 of us, only 13 made it. Wow. So if that tells you anything about how hard these instructors were. And I equate my ability to get through a program that's like that because of A, where I grew up, and B, knowing how to cope with that kind of intense pressure because of learning how to not take things so seriously, but still be motivated to finish it, right? Because you know that there's going to be good that comes out of it on the other side. And that, to me, I feel like a lot of that came from just the persistence of learning how to be a better coach, learning how to do this, try to understand the skills or learn the skills. And through repetition, you learn that you can actually do things that are really hard. And a lot of that determination came from coaching you guys and being a gymnast for a short time that I was. And I still find myself doing that today. Like during COVID, everybody's health went down the tubes, right? We all sat around and didn't do much. And, I got to a weight where I was the heaviest I'd ever been, even when I was pregnant. And so when I got to a point where I was done and I was fed up with just kind of being a couch potato, I joined a gym class, a boot camp. And I was part of this boot camp before COVID hit. And I was probably in the best cardiovascular shape that I had been in a while. I was able to do a 5K, no big deal. I was able to go paddleboarding, and it wasn't even a hard exercise for me before COVID. when COVID hit and I tried to do it, like I couldn't even run a mile after COVID hit. If I'd go paddleboarding, I couldn't go more than like a half an hour, if that. I was doing races before COVID, paddleboard races that were like 5-6 miles, and I couldn't even, paddleboard a half an hour. So I started this boot camp and I got connected with my old coach. He was still there. And so the first day I did it, and this was like last year, November. And I went in and we were all excited to be back together again. And I took the class, and it gives you stats. Like it gives you like what heart rate zones you're in. And there are certain heart rate zones they want you to target. Like an orange zone is like ideal. And they don't want you to spend too much time in the red zone, which is when you're going full on. But the whole time in that hour of a class, I was mostly in the red heart rate zone. And I was so disappointed with myself. And I was like on the verge of tears. And I was like, I can't believe I couldn't like control my heart rate. I was beating myself up, and I was kind of kicking myself down. And he was like, what are you doing? Like, why you're like, this is the first day back, like give yourself a chance. But I was in the mindset that I was still the other Shelby before COVID, that I could do all these things and I was healthy as a horse. And I realized when I got home and I was talking to my husband, he was like, why are you being so hard on yourself? And I was like, because that's kind of the mindset you get from doing gymnastics, kind of. Even if you don't have a coach that's beating you down like that, like just your own like perfectionist attitude and not wanting to be bad at something. Like I have all those things too, Joy. Like I don't want to be bad at anything. I want to be the best person in the room. So it's just kind of crazy that even after all these years, now I'm sitting here at 51 trying to restart my, I don't want to say athlete's journey, but like my health journey with an athlete's mindset. I still go back to that headspace of like, I'm not doing good enough. I'm not performing at the peak that I need to perform at. I'm not doing it the right way. My form sucks. Like all those things you do to beat yourself down. So I'm learning more, like after listening to you guys' podcast too, that like and I know it's kind of stupid to say this, but it really did kind of make me point back at myself when I heard your guys' stories. Cause I was like, dude, you do that too. And you weren't even at the level that they were. And you need to put yourself back in check and like think about what it is that's causing you to think that way, because there really isn't a reason. This is just boot camp. It's just being healthy so that you are around for your grandkids and your kids to graduate college and stuff like that. So anyway, that's kind of my journey in a nutshell. And it was kind of, when you guys had asked me to do this, I was a little bit intimidated and going, what am I going to talk about? Because I didn't train with Posar, and I didn't train with Carolis. I'm just this lowly like kid from El Sereno, is just trying to not get in trouble, and found an outlet. But I realized through doing, talking with you guys and hearing your stories, that everybody has a journey, and everybody's journey is just as important as everybody else's journey.
That's right.
It doesn't matter what success or what failures you had. It's just more important that you're able to accept that you're who you are because of the things that you've experienced and the things that you've done to improve yourself. And I think that's a really important lesson that I'm still to this day at 51 trying to figure that out. Like I'm still learning that lesson. So yeah.
Looking for something special to give your best friend, coworker, or hard to buy for mom? Discover Park Street Goods on Etsy. Our one-of-a-kind modern wood pieces are crafted slowly and lovingly, one at a time. Find a unique handcrafted piece of functional art to add to your home. Come visit Park Street Goods today, because handmade is happy.
Shelby, I have a question for you on that note. First of all, thank you so much. It's really cool to hear your story in its fullness in many ways, because when we were together, we were young and we were with each other.
We didn't talk about this stuff.
We didn't talk about anything.
Yeah.
We don't talk about anything, not just even as an athlete, but as Asian Americans, as kids growing up at the time in the 80s and 90s in Southern California. Nobody did that. It's just, it's not the culture. So the fact that we can do this now is really special. And I really appreciate your sharing. I really am very, very grateful to you for that.
Thanks. I know. I feel kind of like a lot of stuff that like we hung out, Laura and I, you and I hung out a lot when we were in our like early 20s, I think, before you went to UCLA, when you were still sort of involved in Joanne's, I think you were coaching with us too. And we hung out a lot. And I was always in awe of like all the things you did. And I was like, man, I wish I could be like Laura. I was another, I wish I could be like Laura fan. I'm like, you're diving. You're doing all this really great stuff. I always feel like there were so many missed opportunities where you and I could have just sat down and probably talked for a really, really long time. Cause I know sometimes when we phone call each other, it'll go for like a half an hour sometimes, like an hour and a half sometimes.
Yeah.
When I called you and we haven't talked for like months and months and months. And so this whole thing was like an opportunity for me to like reconnect with the both of you, because you two were two people in my before marriage life that, you guys don't know this, but like for me, I felt the most connected to you guys. I don't know if it's because I'm half Japanese and you guys are Filipino and there's a connection there with the Asian part of it, or if it was because we were gymnasts, or if it was because we all were at the same place at the same time during a time in our life where we all needed each other. But I've always had an affinity to like, I wonder what Laura's doing. I wonder what Joy is doing. And then be like, well, I'm not going to go and call and bother them because I don't want to, you know, they're busy people. But I'm hoping through this whole thing that it's not just going to be this one phone call or this one conversation. Like, I hope that at some point we can like reconnect together, maybe, you know, at some point in the future where we can reconnect and actually have like a real adult conversation and not, you know, last time we saw each other, we were all like young adults, or even for you, Joy, you were a kid, like you were still in teenagerhood when we were all hanging out. So
but I think
for letting me tag along. It's like dorky 13-year-old that's like, can I please hang out with you guys?
Well, that's crazy that you say that.
We never thought of you like that.
No. And I always thought you were like super cool. You had the best toe point in the history of toe point that I've ever seen in my entire life. Slightly hyperextended knees. So when you like straighten your knees, really your legs, oh my gosh, absolutely stunning. Oh, absolutely glorious form. It's so weird, the things that we don't talk about and the stories that we make up in our minds about each other when you have to fill in the blanks. Because in my head, I was like, oh my God, she's got everything together. You know, I wish I could be like that. Because for me, I was looking back now, in a fairly deep depression that whole time. In diving in college, I really struggled with depression terribly. And it wasn't until I came to New York and started hanging out with people outside of the sports world, really, that I could start to see the beauty of who I am as a person of color, as a woman, and all the identities that we have. Took getting out of sports for me to come back, and now I'm this new way. And now I can look back at all that time and I'm like, oh my God, look how kick-ass all of us were. Truly amazing. Yeah. It was such a special friendship. And the beautiful thing is that we can always pick up where we left off. Yeah. And that's actually, no matter how much time goes by, Shelby, we always pick up where we left off. And that is the best friendship, because life gets busy. Yeah. So busy.
Yeah. Well, you went and left and went to like another country for a while. And I remember that whole struggle. Right. Right. I remember that. And I remember you and I talking about it. I'm like, you got to do it. You got to do it. And you're like, oh, I know. My parents are not really thrilled about it. And I'm like, just go do it.
You are one of the only people that was pretty sure I was not going to get married to a drug lord and end up like, you know, hold up.
I don't think our viewers know this, Laura, because we never ever shared with them that you were in the Peace Corps. You lived in Bolivia for 2 years.
Weirdly, a number of people that I am good friends with did Peace Corps.
No way.
I have a friend who went to Malawi. Yeah, I had a friend who went to Malawi. I had another friend who didn't go to Bolivia. They went to Ecuador, I think. And dug canals or something like that. Like it's and weirdly, these three people all ended up going into some sort of service work too. Like you're doing your therapy stuff. My other friend is a nurse practitioner. My other friend is a physical therapist at a hospital. So it's like, and I always wanted to go to Peace Corps, but I didn't think I could do it. Like I had a very small, it was like a small-minded mentality of like, you don't ever leave the town that you're in. until my mom passed away. And then I was like, I'm out of here. Like, there's nothing
Mhm.
keeping me here now. And I like
Yeah.
took off up north. And like Laura, when I went somewhere outside of my bubble, then I realized, okay, I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. If I could get
Yeah.
out, I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now you can
Yeah.
answer the question.
Let me see if I can remember it. So this season, we're really focusing on athlete as identity, athlete over the lifespan. We're hearing you sort of finding athletics as a way to have a safe haven, a place to express yourself, and that turns into coaching. And just even alone the way that your brain works, being able to take something very complex that you're looking at and being able to explain it in the service of education and teaching. And it's full body. It's not just like,
Yeah.
because you have to explain it and try to get someone to get it in their minds, but
Right.
actually then that turns into a physical response from that, right?
Right.
So Shelby, you and I have kids, and we're supporting kids in their own sports journeys as well. We have talked about this before. Joy and I, we've witnessed this in other people before, but especially from the coaching point of view, and maybe this is for both of you, from the coach's point of view, especially when you have kids and they're kind of early on and we're not sure where they're going to end up. We're just thinking about this now as my kids in basketball. There's this sort of like everybody thinks that their kid's going to be the next LeBron.
LeBron, yep.
Yeah. Like, what is that like for you both, remembering the world of coaching, but particularly for you, Shelby, because you really enjoyed working with the kid group that was kind of early on, less the team group. What was that
Yes.
like for you working with parents? What would you say to parents that are looking for programs? I mean,
Ooh.
these are kind of like, it's kind of a bigger question, but coming from the coach's point of view, what would you say?
So I can honestly say that my kids, I put them in gymnastics early because I appreciated what it did in in the early years of you developing. Like, it gives you spatial awareness, understanding where your body is in where it is in space, right? Like all those things that it does, develops balance, coordination, you get strong muscles, all the things, right? As soon as they got to a point, both my kids got to a point where they were like, hey, we want to talk to you about your child joining the team. I was like, nope, I'm good. We're not doing that. We're not. Because I think having experience as a coach from a rec side is fun. It's all parties and being goofy and silly and just kind of throwing caution into the wind and doing crazy things that you've never done before. There's no pressure to be perfect. It's not meant to be serious and pinpointed coaching, right? It's like, okay, you did great, even though their legs are like all wonky and stuff.
Yeah.
As soon as my kids got to a point in a sport where they were, well, not in necessarily in any sport, but as soon as my kids got into gymnastics and they were like, hey, we want your kids to join the boys team, I was like, nope, we're done. So then we transitioned them to swim, and they were actually doing gymnastics and swim lessons at the same time. Like, we were just shoving our kids in all the things, right? Because
Yeah. Expose
you
them to
want to keep them
everything.
busy. Like,
Yeah.
my brain was keep them busy, they stay out of trouble, right?
Yeah.
If I'm busy, I don't get in trouble. So like, we always had the rule of, you go to school, you do an instrument. So they were also taking music classes. I was that total like dragon mom. Academics, an instrument, and a sport. And if you don't like the sport you're doing, you try it for a year. And if you hate it, you move to some other kind of sport, but you're always going to have a sport because that's going to keep you healthy. You're not sitting in front of the computer playing video games. You're interacting with different adults, learning how to accept conversations from adults other than your parents. You're learning how to interact with your peers. Like, there's a lot of things that benefit, I feel. And this is coming from a coach's point of view. Like, I feel there's a lot of things that parents don't understand are actually happening, or maybe they do and they choose to just like blinders on. My kid's going to be the next, and here's a dated comment, my kid's going to be the next Shannon Miller, or my kid's going to be the next Dominic Dawes. This is where I'm at from gymnastics.
Right.
Like, those were my Brandy Johnson. Oh my God, I wanted to be Brandy Johnson so bad. I know. I'm like, oh, Brandy Johnson. I want to be Shannon Miller on beam, and I want to be Brandy Johnson on floor. That was like my two goals.
Totally.
But for me, like, as a coach, and not having to do it from a serious, like a hardcore, serious, competitive coach point of view, like, I understood what I was doing was providing a service to these kids where it was fun and there was no pressure, because you go to school all day, people are telling you you have to do all these things, right? So your brain is just full. So what better than to go to a place that's full of all of padded, it's like totally padded, and there's bars you can swing from and places where you can jump into a pit of foam and you don't get hurt and you can just hurl your body in there. It's a place to let go. It's a place to release. It's to take all that stress and tension that you had and get it out, like shake it out. Like I always told my boys, get your wiggles out, right? We'll take a ball and we'll run at the park. I think any sport can be that way, but I think it's really dependent on the parent and having those conversations with like what the expectation is from the coaches for the parents. So if their kid wants to be intense basketball, and then believe me, we've been there with the intense basketball and swimming too. Like those two sports is kind of crazy how intense people can get with that stuff. Like my kids were swimmers, they were competitive swimmers, and everybody thought that their kid was going to be the next Michael Phelps. I even forget his name, Michael Phelps, or yeah. And I just wanted my kids to be ocean safe.
Yeah.
And they got to a level in their swim lessons where there wasn't anywhere else to go. So, okay, we'll throw you in swimming. My kids hated being cold all the time. My kids hated practices because they were super intense. We had one good coach at the beginning, and then she retired. And then after that, when we tried to continue, it was like one intense coach after one intense coach after one intense coach, to the point where the kids were like broken. My kids were like, we don't want to do this anymore. Nobody's nice. So I was like, okay, we'll do basketball. So then we stuck them in basketball. And I always made sure that like my husband and I were not the parent coaches in the chairs on the side. Like if I caught him doing that, I was like putting my hand over his mouth and going, stop it. Because I didn't like it when I was a coach. And I was just doing rec gym. Yeah. But I had those parents sitting along the edge of the floor there. Ashley, point your toes. You know what I mean? Like, Savannah, you need to straighten your leg more. And then I turn around and look at them like, zip it. Like, that's my job, not yours. Like, you're just there to watch. You don't get to say anything. So I think as a coach, I've learned for my kids anyway. And, you know, I try not to step on other people's parenting toes, but for my kids, as soon as whatever sport they were in got not fun anymore, then I told them, let's do something else. We'll do something else. And then COVID hit because my kids were in competitive basketball and they were going to play high school basketball. And then COVID hit and they couldn't do they couldn't compete in high school basketball. And I don't know if that was devastating to them or not, because my oldest kid, who would have been playing high school basketball during COVID, he still plays basketball. He just goes on his own and plays with his friends. Like he'll do pickup games with his friends. And so I feel like for him, maybe it's still fun. I feel like him and his dad, they connect with basketball. And so for them, it's still fun. We had him in a club team, and Laura knows this probably with her kids, like club basketball is crazy. And people are really kind of mean and cutthroat sometimes, especially the kids who are getting a lot of attention from the coaches. And I remember that in gymnastics too, is like the kids who would get a lot of attention from whoever was coaching that team level. Those parents were like, I couldn't believe some of the behaviors that came from that. And I was just kind of surprised that you're a grown person. I'm 20 years younger than you, and I can see that you're acting like a total idiot. Like, wow. It's just a sport. It's meant to be fun. It's games. It's games, guys. It's games.
Yeah. I mean, I think
I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah.
Thank
you.
No,
totally. I mean, Shelby, I coached gymnastics for a little bit too. And I shared on the podcast that it was really triggering, because the tactic for me was, if you want to compete, you're pretty darn serious about it. And what is the expectation of that? And, you know, we're at a level 5 competition, and I'm like screaming at the girls because they're not in line or they're goofing off in between rotations. And we're like at a competition, and you have this like code, right? Like you have to be serious at a meet, and you have to like be focused for the next event. And if you're playing with your friend and you're, you know, playing stupid games, you must not be a serious athlete. And, you know, it's this tactic in them. It's like this brainwashing that goes into your brain that there's only one way to go when you get to that level. And so, can there be a program where if there is a kid who is exceptional, you know, in any sport, right? You know, that there's going to be kids that have natural talent, have natural promise, right? And genuinely loves the sport that they're in, and they might love competing. They might be like, I like this crap, right?
Yeah.
So where is the line,
Mm-hmm.
as a parent, as a coach, of like, how do you nurture the talent, but also let that dream be your child, And so it's always that mentality for me, looking at now on the outside, like I'm an observer now, and whether it's like the kids that I work with or watching Laura's kids play basketball, or my nieces, or, my nephew who does softball, and granted he's like 5 and everybody gets a trophy type of thing. But it's this mentality of like, if I saw, right, like everybody gets a trophy, everybody's the winner. But it's this
Yep.
mentality of like, there are these few kids where you see that there is some special spark, and that sort of,
Yeah.
like Laura's son wakes her up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to play basketball on the schoolyard when nobody else is at the school. And she could care less getting up at that time. But that kid pulls her out of bed
Mhm.
every morning and he's like, Mom, I'm going to go and be in the NBA. And he's shooting hoops. And we're like in the living room talking. We're having a conversation. We're trying to brainstorm for season 2. And you just hear the Nerf backboard like behind his door, like, thunk, thunk, and we're trying to focus. And this kid does not do anything
Oh
but like
God.
play basketball, and it's like genuinely this kid
Yeah.
is passionate about it and he loves it. And it's really hard. Like I get it as a parent to just like, I mean, he loves it. And so it's this idea of like, how do you separate it? How do you know when it's the child's dream and you're not interfering into it? And then as a coach, it's like it's natural to want to work with those types of kids. It's natural to want to invest in those kids. But ultimately, I think the thing that I loved about Joanne in a lot of ways, Shelby, because we all have stories about Joanne and we're all in different phases of life with Joanne. But the thing with Joanne, I was sharing with a friend because they had listened to her episode and they're like, "Oh my God, you have like this amazing coach." And to have a mentor like that, and for her to know so many nuances of your story and Laura's story. And I had told my friend, I was like, Chelsea, she has that story for every one of her athletes. It is
That's
not
right.
just Laura, who is this exceptional talent, or me, who's an exceptional talent. She has it for like the kids that were like in
Mm-hmm.
her recreational class. And
Mhm.
it's beautiful. It goes back to like where me and Laura is like, how do we promote whole person compassion care? And it's not just about the when. We're championing kids to be champion at life. And, where is the element where
Right.
both can exist? Where
Yeah.
a child who's exceptional can get all of the support that they need, can go and compete and, go further. And hopefully there are higher level coaches that can still nurture that care, and
Yeah.
why is it that when we have this thing in this sport, right, specifically with gymnastics, because we all have gone through it, that when we get to a competitive level, we're just like, oh, no, 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 no. Why do we not have the trust or the safety to think that that exists, And so what me and Laura are hoping and trying to promote here is that those types of programs come out of the woodwork and
Yeah.
and nurture those types of people. And we know that
Yeah.
they exist. We do. They do exist. It's just we need to invest in those types of programs and promote those type of programs where those get more
Yeah.
amplified than the others.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
once I left the gymnastics community, like I literally like I left and didn't look back. I coached a little bit when I was at UC Santa Cruz because I was only there for a short time. Like I did my junior and my senior year at UC and then I graduated and then I moved down to San Diego and I moved in with my then boyfriend, now husband, for God, how long have we been together? Like
I've
we've
been
been
a
together
while.
since
I was young when
97.
you started dating. Yeah. I was in high school, I think, when you guys started
Yeah,
dating.
like he actually came and watched me coach. Well, he also saw me choke a lot, but he actually came to Joanne's gym when I was coaching there. I think we're having like I was doing like a cheer class or something. I was teaching some cheerleaders how to do tumbling, and he was there, and he used to have like really long scraggly hair and a mustache and a goatee. He doesn't look like that anymore.
And the top
I cleaned
hat.
him
I
up a little
always
bit.
think of the top
And a top
hat.
hat and like funky clothes.
Sensational.
Yeah, and it's kind of amazing the transformation that happened with him. I think we were both kind of lost puppies. We were just trying to figure out where our place was in the world, and he's always been like my biggest champion. Like he knows that I live with my head in the clouds a lot. That's just the Sagittarius in me. I'm always kind of thinking about the dreams and think like, oh yeah, this would sound really great, and then he'll be like, okay, come back down, let's talk about it. So he always kind of grounds me, and he was a big part of why I'm able to talk about my mom getting sick and then my mom passing away. Like, back then therapy wasn't a thing that you did unless you were really struggling, and especially as an Asian American, that was not something you did unless you were really struggling. And I was probably a candidate of having to have some therapy, but I had Larry. And so I would talk with my then boyfriend, now husband, and he was a good person to soundboard off. And when I wanted to go to school, like I had real small-minded goals. Like I was going to go to Cal State LA. I wasn't thinking bigger. Like I can't get into a UC school. I'm not going to apply to any UC schools. He's the reason why I applied to a UC school. And then ultimately I got into a UC school. And when I told him I graduated from Santa Cruz, moved down here, I was originally going to stay in San Francisco, and I was going to try my hat at being a Northern Californian person. But ultimately it freaked me out. Like San Francisco was scary to me for some reason. And so I called him and we chatted about it. He was like, just come to San Diego. And I was like, okay. And so now it's going on, with a couple of stints out of San Diego when we lived in Hawaii, but we pretty much lived in San Diego since 2020, since 1999.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
We had like a year or so where we were in Hawaii and had Steven, but he's the person who kind of has coached me, even though he doesn't think about it as that. He's the person who coached me at life, like learning how to be an adult, being responsible, and being a role model for my kids. Like I'm still goofy Shelby who gets herself into trouble, but I make better decisions now.
And you make amazing cookies.
And I make amazing.
Oh my gosh, you do.
So crafty. I wish we had all the time in the world to keep chatting, because this is just.
Well, we'll just have to continue this on like a reunion or something. We'll have to.
Yeah, we'll have to go to San Diego when Laura comes to LA.
Yeah, that's okay.
Good. Well,
I like that.
We need to do that,
and you can just come back.
I'm down for that.
Yeah.
For
sure.
Come back. Yeah, and we'll just restart where we left off.
Always. And same thing if and when you can make it to New York, it's all the same. It's real.
I was like this with the whole college situation. I was like this. I was like, oh, I wish.
Oh my
but
God, it'd be so cool.
The kids going to San Diego, San Diego, so I can't complain. That's a great school.
That's an amazing school.
Congratulations to him.
It may just be like I have to just go out there because I've never been in New York and I need to smell the smells and see the sights. I heard New York smelly.
In the summer. Oh my gosh, Shelby.
Smelly place in the world.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not.
Trash on the street, sometimes.
It's special. When I shouldn't say
Larry's been and he said it's smelly. But I'm willing to go and experience the smelly and go do all the cool things that I've seen you do, Laura, on all of your social media pages, and just like go to New York to hang out with you. And I, even just to get to know Nathan a little better, because I feel like I don't know him as well as I think I should. So,
he's
I can torment him.
Yes, absolutely.
I can torment him a little bit too while I'm out there.
You definitely have to go.
We're coming to the end. Shelby, thank you again so much for being our guest today and sharing your wisdom and your story with us. I know, hands down, people are listening. It's so helpful to hear all the versions of athlete in the world, and we are all forever athletes. We all have the athlete mentality. We are living it.
Resonates with them.
Yes,
absolutely.
Day in and day out, forever and ever. We are ending each episode with what's called the Lightning Discuss. Discuss is a little game that Nathan and I made up some years ago in an effort to not have to talk about kids and housework and all these things when we had one of the very few times in our lives where we were able to go away from the kids. So I'm going to state a
Mhm.
question or a statement, and I say the word discuss. Joy has played this with us so many times. And then we're all going to answer, and there's no debating it. Everybody, don't even think too hard about it. Just say whatever comes to mind.
Okay.
Are you ready? Want to play?
Okay.
Okay.
It might be weird.
Weirder
I
the
hope
better.
so.
We're crossing our fingers for weird.
Yeah. Okay. If you could be a Muppet, which Muppet would you be? Discuss.
Oh, hands down. And I don't even know the name of her, but it's the pink one with the little pom-pom things. I don't know her name, but it's the girl
What's the
Muppet, the
girl?
pink one
Yeah.
with the pom-pom.
Yeah.
The one in the
Why?
band?
I'll have to,
The one in
I
the
just
band
feel
who's like that one? Or no?
No, she's like a little girl. It's a little girl. She has a very high-pitched voice, but she's a little, and I don't know, maybe I'm mixing up Muppets with Fraggle Rock, but she's kind of like it's Fraggle
You're
Rock.
talking about Fraggle Rock.
Yeah.
That's okay.
The one,
That's okay.
It's in the same family.
It's the red one and she kind of is like crazy and really chaotic. And I feel like that pretty much embodies me now in my life now. Like I'm never sitting still. I'm always kind of a buzz. That's me. Like I'm totally that Muppet. I should get her on a shirt.
You are definitely
either that or Beaker.
I love that.
Beaker. Oh, that's a good one.
Or Beaker,
I like
because I
that
am
one.
science minded, and I
Yeah.
literally just like talk to hear myself talk sometimes, and it's like me.
Well, it was when your thing was glitching all day today too. Shelby,
that's
Shelby.
Good stuff.
That's great.
Joy, how about you?
I think for me, it would be Miss Piggy. And Laura always says this, like that I am naturally like attracted to really strong characters for some reason. And there's something about Miss Piggy that I always find hysterical. Like I always thought she was funny, but I think it's the confidence and the thing of her thinking that she is the bee's knees. And there's something about that I find really attractive. And so like those types of characters I've always like gravitated towards. What about you, Laura?
That's a good one.
That's a really good one. In my head, I want to be Rolf. You know, I want to be the wise piano playing chill dog. But then on the inside, I know I'm animal. I know I'm like it. It's between the two. If Rolf and Animal had a baby, it would be me. I think there's times I can be very chill, but then there's times I'm like absolutely insane, but playing some killer drums or something.
That's really good.
And then just to add to that, you know, the two old dudes that used to sit in the balcony on the Muppet
Show?
That's me and Larry in like probably 5 years.
I love that. I could see that actually with the two of you.
Totally.
Just picking on everybody.
Yeah. Awesome.
As long as you get that top hat back, man.
Thanks, guys. I think he has it. I think it's in the garage buried somewhere, but I think we do still have it.
And you need to take it out. We do
have the red and white boat pants, so I know those are hanging. Those are hanging in our closet.
Amazing.
Photo, please.
Photo. He still has some remnants of his old days.
Come on, Larry, bring it out. You know he wants to. We love you so much, Shelby. Thank you so much.
He might have to.
Awesome.
Love you guys. We'll have to get together again soon. Don't make it too long between now and then. Okay,
no, for sure.
We won't.
All right.
We won't.
Love you.
Bye.
Awesome.
It's always good to talk to Shelby.
Now, why are we so far?
I know.
All of my favorite people. We must be so far from each other geographically, but I love that we can just pick up where we left off and keep going, though. That's friendship nowadays. And she's so bright and beautiful and amazing. She's super multi-talented and incredible, but the most humble human you will ever meet in the world.
Just oozes kindness. That's Shelby. So next week we get to talk to our friend Blake, who is this phenomenal soccer player, amazing human being.
Absolutely. And he is the co-chair of the Athlete Advisory Committee of the Athlete Mental Health Alliance for Athletes for Hope. And it's an incredible story.
Wow. Yeah. So we'll get to talk to him next week.
Yeah. Until then, I love you, Joy.
I love you more.
I love you most.
Bye. Thanks for tuning in. If you have any questions, please reach out to us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok.
Share and follow us on Amazon, Spotify, and Apple. Help us out and leave a 5-star review. Thanks.